All right, welcome back after Hafsaka for Purim. We're back to Minchat Chinuch on Thursday nights at Schwartz, 1575 Coney Island Avenue. I always begin with Hakar Satayv to TorahAnytime.com for making these shiurim available for those who are not in attendance. And I want to dedicate the schus of tonight's Limud HaTorah to Refuah Shleima of Rav Yosef Shalom ben Chaim Moshe and Rav Chaim Yisrael ben Chaim Tziril, to Gedali Yisrael, Chaim Banu Chachmi Yisrael, and to all Chaylei Ami Yisrael. Okay, so we are in the middle of the Arba Parshias, and I chose for tonight's mitzvah from the Minchat Chinuch, the mitzvah Paraduma, but I really want to talk a little bit more in continuum to the beginning of the Arba Parshias, which always begins with Parsha Shkolim. So let's start like this. Take a look on you have 2 pages of the handout. Take a look on the second page of the handout, Amud Kuf Yud Beis, first in the Chinuch. Okay, the second paragraph on the page. For top line, the second paragraph. V'haisen nilkachas mimois trumas halishka. Okay, they used to buy the paraduma with money that came from the Trumas Alishka. There's some more handouts over here. Okay. So we're on the second page, on Amud Kuf Yud Beis, the second paragraph, the first line in the Imam just started a second ago. The first line of the Chinuch, before we get into any Minchas Chinuch. V'haisen l'kachas mimois Trumas Alishka. They used to buy the funds that went, and it was an astronomical sum usually. Everyone knows the famous Gemara in Kedushin, Dovid ben Nesina. There was this guy, Dovid ben Nesina, who had an Evan, a precious stone that they could have used for the Chayshin, and his father was sleeping, and the jewel box, the safe, whatever it was, the key, was under his father's pillow, and the Chachmi Yisrael came and they wanted to buy the precious gemstone, and Machmas Kiburav, he didn't want to disturb his father. He refused to wake up his father. So it says that Lashana Acheres, the next year, a paraduma was Naila Badrei, and it was an even bigger fortune for this Dama ben Nesina that a paraduma was born. The Gemara was trying to say the schar of being Nizar Kiburav. Bottom line is paraduma is very rare. I think Chazal say there were 9 of them from Moshe Rabbeinu until the Churban Bayis, and the 10th one will be Mitzvah Hashem B'mei Mashiach, Meher Yameinu. But the bottom line is it's very, very rare. When you're going to see some of the specs, when you learn some of the dinim of what's involved in a kosher paraduma, you understand why it was pretty much a priceless item. But whatever the price was fixed, the funds came from the Trumas Alishka. Now, the main funding for the Trumas Alishka was the Machzah Shekel Shel Chol Shana L'Shana. Trumas Alishka is the same fund from which we buy Tmidim and Musafim. Karbanas Tzibur, the money comes from the Trumas Alishka. A Yachid wants to be misnad of a carbon, it's out of his own pocket. But Karbanas that are on behalf of all of Klal Yisrael, that comes from the Trumas Alishka. The Chiddush of the Paraduma coming from the Trumas Alishka is that its status as a carbon is a little bit wobbly. It might be Kadshe Berek Abai, it's only because the Torah calls it a Chatas. We'll see in a minute why it's not so pasha. There's a carbon like other carbonas. But here's my question to you. When you buy something from Trumas Alishka, the Gizbarim of the Beis HaMikdash, the people in charge of these funds, of the collecting them, of dispersing them, they go to the livestock market and they buy an animal, they buy a behemoth. Yeah? They want to buy a tamid. Or maybe they want at the beginning of the week, they want to knock off for the whole week. They buy 14 animals. A tamid shel shach, a tamid shel ben abayim. Right? Does that need Kedushas peh or not? Do the duly appointed officers of the tzibur have to say, Harei za'ilus tamid? Or if the monies were intended to buy tmidim, so there's a kedusha on the money. You know, it's like an inverse pidyon. You know, there's some karbanas that nafal by mum, you can be part of them. Kachim not, kachim kalam. So maybe this is a reverse kind of a thing. Maybe when you pay the money for the carbon, the money had a kedusha on it. Now it's certainly, you're not going to be mild. The seller, the rancher, the livestock owner, the guy who's selling the animals to the Gizbarm and the Beis HaMikdash wants to be able to use the funds. So the funds are certainly a yaitzel l'chulin. Does the kedusha transfer automatically onto the animals that were bought, or does it still need kedusha's peh, as if it would be a carbon yachid? An individual wants to bring a carbon, he has to say hareza kaish l'shem, ayro l'shem, shlomim l'shem, whatever, right? Is there another handout? Shlom, on that table there are a few handouts. Okay. I'm asking this. I'm not trying to bait anyone with this question. I don't know the answer to this question. I'm sure it's a pasha that's in somewhere. I didn't want to call Mishnah Shkalim. I don't know. What does this svara? What does this svara tell you? If you buy, if the gizber buys karbanis, he has to designate what kind of karbanis they are, or whatever his intention is to buy. That's the kedusha. That's the understanding when people are menad of machtas hashekel. They're going to buy karbanis tzibur from it. So the transfer of the kedusha is automatic. That's my chakira.
I would say he has to say, just like an individual says, that even though the more is
right,
having kedusha, but it's not automatic, because he could also designate the carbon to be something other than something could have been an oil, could have meant to be.
Well, every time it isn't. I mean, it could have been a musaf. Yeah, maybe he's buying at the beginning of the week for the Shabbos musaf. Maybe Rosh Chodesh is falling that week. So unless he says Ganai, after he buys it, what kind of kedusha he wants it for?
Then it doesn't have a kedusha yet.
Doesn't have any kedusha at all, or just it has to be more specified?
No, it's the property of Hegdish, but it doesn't make it Hegdish. That doesn't give it the kedusha of the carbon.
Okay, I'll show you why I'm clearing. Okay, now take a look weiter, just in the Chinuch itself, on Amid Kuf Yud Aleph, the second side of the first page. Okay, the second paragraph. There's a long first paragraph in the Chinuch. And then the second paragraph starts with the words Midinei HaMitzvah. Okay, about 3 lines down. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. Ve'ein loikhin egla u'megadlin isa elapara. Okay, there are words in Lashon Kodesh. You go to your butcher shop, you can ask for veal and you can ask for beef. It's coming from the same species. It's coming from the same animal. What makes some meat veal and some meat beef is the age of the animal at the time of the shechita. All right, it's exactly the same animal. Same thing with lamb and mutton. I don't know how many kosher butchers sell mutton, but in English, there's a difference between lamb and mutton. That's the difference. Lamb is coming from an immature lamb, and mutton is coming from a mature sheep. So, the Torah says, para aduma tamima. What's an immature para called? An egla. A male is called an egel, and an adult is called a par or a shar. And the female is species, a calf or a cow. A calf. Actually, a calf, I guess, could be a zachar too, because we call it the golden calf, and that was a zachar. But an egla is immature, and a para is mature. So, ein loikchen egla u'megadlin isa el para. Yeah, you can't buy it when it's still an egla, and then allow it to grow into a para, and then do the shchita and the sreifa and the avodas that need to be done with a paraduma. That's no good. Shenamar v'yichwe lecha para. Pasuk says v'yichwe lecha the lakicha, the acquisition has to be when it's already a para. What would be the motivation to buy it immature, to buy it when it's an agla?
Cheaper. That matter, you can buy pregnant cows and hope to get that paraduma out of it.
Cheaper. Cattle futures. I mean, if a guy, Manashach, if the guy's a rube, if he doesn't know what kind of a commodity he's sitting on, so, all right, I know it's a gnevis das. I mean, if a guy knows, certainly if a Jew, if you're buying it from a Jew, but certainly the Gemara says it's far. It seems that in the times when paraduma were prevalent, we paskin, for example, that you can buy a paraduma, the famous Gemara just quoted, I got the Bakibet Avem of Dama ben Nesina. You can buy a paraduma from a guy. You shouldn't be allowed to buy it from a guy because they're choshed on Arviyah, right? And a nirva, an animal that's undergoing bestiality, is possible by paraduma just like any other karbanis. So why aren't you choshed for that? We pass that you're allowed to buy paraduma from a guy because he's not going to ruin such a valuable property. They knew what it was. I mean, if the guy knows that this thing can grow up to be a paraduma, I don't think it's any cheaper.
Another reason to buy young is to make sure that it wasn't worked with. That's one of the conditions.
Oh, that's the zach. Okay, there are a lot of things that can go wrong in paraduma, where if it's under Jewish auspices already, under the auspices of the Gizbarim, the Beis HaMikdash, you can give it a better shmirah and make sure that nothing goes wrong with it. I think that would be the number one motivation. Hopefully we're going to get a little bit to the halachas. Right, yeah, Mata Shmur. Para Shmur Mishas Leida. Yeah. Okay. At any rate, so we have over here Azah Halacha that you have to, I'm not going into right now at what years Al Pi Halacha is it called an egla, whatever the halachic touch of an egla is, you can't buy it immature, you have to buy it. The mitzvah is to buy it when it's already a para, when it outgrew the stage of egla. Okay, now let's take a look at the Minchas Chinuch. Turn back to Kuf Yud. Okay, Ois Beis on Kuf Yud in the Minchas Chinuch. With Tzrichen Lichnes Eisa Kashi Para, Zok the Minchas Chinuch, you have to buy it when it's a para. Vein Leichen Eglug Magadlan Eisa. Can't buy it when it's still a calf and then raise it. The Chsiv V'yikre Lecha Para, the Lakicha has to be when it's already a para. The imlay matzu ala egla. What do you do though? Since this is a tremendously rare commodity, what happens if, when it's discovered, it's at the age of egla? What should you do then? If the mitzvah is to buy it when it's a para, paiskin ala adamim, viva beis abayla machetagl v'teyos para. Start an escrow account. You put money away. You fix a price with the seller that when it'll be raised to adulthood, this money is going to be used to make the kinyan on the para. But the actual kinyan, you have to wait until it matures. That's the din. V'arayv b'asagis.
What happens if a party is born to Hektish?
2 hegdish?
Yeah. I mean, Hektish had their own.
Right, herds of animals.
What happened?
V'lad echatis?
Yeah.
Good question.
What happened?
If this li kuva, if there's not a mitzvah l'chatchila, what do you think should be then in that case? If it was owned by Hegdish, if an egla is no good and an uber is certainly no good, it's certainly not it's not called a para b'me'ima. Gedult. Let's we don't know enough yet. Let's read a little bit. There's machlokes b'shainim here, and let's see what this is all about. Okay. V'mlay matzah el egla paiskan la adam v'ibeh beis habaylim ad shetagl v'tiyas para. As I state in Rambam, he's going to Rambam over here. He started off with our halachas from the Rambam, so this is also a quote from the Rambam. The Ravid Basagas, the Ravid Kriegz, and he says, Daita den kpede bezeh. Rak also lahagdish ba'aychi egla. It's also that you magdish it while it's an egla. You don't have to set up an escrow account and wait with the kinyan until it's a para. Buy it when it's a calf. Buy it when it's an egla. The hagdish will come later. Davle mechutz man. The Rabbi comes up with a Lamdish Chiddush. There's such a psul in Karbanas called Mechutz Zman. Shivas Yam Tiyatach Zimai, Yam Shmini, Ohala, Yeratze. Right? Karbanas, you can't be makro on the Mizbeach if they're less than 8 days old. Right? So you can't even be Magdish a Mechutz Zman. It's one of these things that you don't call Ma'adam Rachmani Yavid Lemahani. If you'll be Magdish it, but Yavid, it will not be Kaddish. What? Chutz l'zman, chutz l'mkaima, he's talking about a bad machshava of the Ovid about going too late. We're talking about too early over here. This is mechutz l'zman. It's not mature enough. The chutz l'zman ifshad is a carbon that's only nachal l'yayim v'layla, and you l'layla v'yayim. I mean, you want to eat it after shkia the next day, or shlomim, you want to eat it the night after the second day.
Pesach also has a zman.
Right. So in some karbanis, it's still, except for Pesach and Achatas, then is first mission is welcome. Except for Pesach and Achatas, other karbanis, the Bailam is not Yotzi Dechavas, he has to bring another carbon, but the carbon is still kosher. And I'm getting mixed up. That's Machshav Shleil Shma. Chutz l'zman, chutz l'mkaima, I think it's Mafagel everything. I don't remember off the top of my head. And anyway, but we're talking about it's too early, not that it's too late. The animal's talking. So the Rabbi is telling too that this kpeda of the Torah, para and not an egla, is also a psadin of mechutz zman. So mechutz zman, you can't be magdish it when it's too young, but to be kainet, so you can be kainet. Stop. Pause right here. So I don't know from the Mishnah Shkalim, I don't know from anywhere else, but l'chayra from this Ravid is a raya. My original kakira. What happens when the gizbarim pay money for a carbon? Does it become automatically kosher? The answer is no. It's monetarily it's in Rishus Gavaya, but ecclesiastically, whatever in Dina Yisrael Heter, It's not a carbon yet, right? So you need kedushas peh. Apparently, that's what he's saying. You can buy it when it's an egla. Yeah, it's now in the ownership of the gizbaran of Gavaya of Beis Hamikdash. I don't know how to be magdur 100%, but then the day that it turns a para, then they can be magdash it. How do they magdash it? They bought it already. They magdash it with kedushas peh, as I've says. Okay, at least from the Ravid. Rak also lahagdash ba'oid shi egla. Davay mechutz zman ve'em magdash mechutz zman l'zbeach. Upara chatas kayi rachman. Okay, this is a very important theme that keeps on repeating itself throughout Hilchas Para Aduma. Para Aduma, legabi certain things, only has kedushas bedek abayis. Para Aduma was nishkat. You want to talk about chutz l'kaima, Shlomo? Chutz l'gimel machnas. Not only didn't need safin, it didn't need azara. There was a kapeda. You had to shacht it where the mitzaram were. Chutz l'gimel machnas. Chutz l'Yerushalayim. You had to shacht the Para Aduma. So it's a mother. There's some Rishonim that learn that, the famous Zayis Chukas HaTorah, Sha'um Asylum Meinen, that it's such a strange chayk. So some Rishonim learn that what the Asylum Taina on the Para Aduma is it's like it's a carbon lavayda zara. It's zifchei l'sirim shchutei chutz, right? But the issue of shchutei chutz in the Torah it says v'layizbul l'sirim asherem zaynim acharayim, right? The Ramban says an endlich azach by the Sarah Lazazel that it's like a sheikhet to the koyches chitzayim. But this is how some Rishonim learned that the chayk of the Para Aduma, the chuk of the Para Aduma is the saying it's not done in the Azara, it's not done in Tzvainam Mizbeach, it's the Krayvas Akum, it's a carbon lavayda Azara. So you need a special limud. If the Torah wouldn't call it a chatas, then it wouldn't have the dinam of a chatas. It wouldn't have the dinam of a carbon. Lagabi many things wouldn't have the dinam of a carbon. So he's saying, the Ravid, that since aber chatas kayrachmana, das steht nicht in der Gemara. This is the Ravid's chiddush. Hayos the chatas kayrachmana. The same way there's a psul of and a lack of tfisas kedusha in a mechus zman and a chatas. If you try to be an individual who's mechuyah to bring a chatas, if you would try to be magdish a 6-day-old behema, you couldn't do it. So the same thing over here. If the gizbarim try to be magdish an egla, it doesn't work. It's a din of mechus zman. Aval akicha beloy hegdish ain't k'peidah, but just to buy it without hegdish, on that there's no k'peidah. V'ayim because of Mishnah, because of the Sifri Zuta, mashma k'div Rabbeinu, v'chein because of Rav Mechaber. Because the Mishnah says that in the Sifri Zuta, it's mashma like the Rambam, that this is likuva, that you can't even buy it. You have to set up an escrow account. If you buy it when it's an egla, that passes it. It's b'diavad, it's likuva. And the Chinuch also writes like that. Weiter a little bit in the Minchas Chinuch. V'hinei, af al pishu min ha-Torah, mikol makom near the b'diavad and makav v'lo nifsal b'kach. Okay, he's being mitzad in this machlokes Ram and the Ravid. The Minchas Chinuch says, I like what the Ravid is saying. I know there's not an asmachta b'alma, there's a real drasha, power of a layagla, but it's not likuva. Midloi kosav zeh, the puzzle, k'mosh kosav akakach, abishar dinim, near the makav. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Not he's mitzaded like the Ravid. He's saying even the Rambam would be ma'adah. When the Rambam later brings a bunch of other dinim that passel in other karbanis, nirva and abalmum, yaitza right? He does not list likichas egla among them. Yeah, so he's learning in the Rambam also that even though l'chatchila you have to purchase it when it's a para, but b'diavad it's not ma'akiv. V'yisi perek beis the para Mishnah Aleph. Gabi paras chatas mu'beres. Okay, Rabbi, you this is the point you raised before. Yeah, it's a Mishnah in para. Let me read you the Mishnah. Mishnah steht azay. First Mishnah, the second parak of Masechtas Para. Rabbi Elazar Eimer, paras chatas hamu'beres k'sherim. A paras chatas, meaning a para aduma, that's mu'beres is kosher, v'chacham and paislan. Rabbi Elazar Eimer en l'kachas menayv d'chacham v'chacham machshirin. Other machlokes they have is Rabbi Elazar Taka holds halacha l'maisa that you can't buy one from a guy. What he does with the narrative of Dovid ben Nesina, I don't know. Maybe that was after we passed against him. The mice historically, the mice of Dovid ben Nesina, and the Chacham say that's okay. Zokter Azai, v'ayisir perek bez the para, Mishnah Aleph. Gabi Paras Chas Muberes, the Relaz Machshvacham, Paislin, maybe Arash, B'Shem Mari Mesimpunt, Kipsazar Rishon Ri Mesimpunt, I never heard of this town before. The Pligi Ima Uber Kosher Lapara. They're not talking about the mother. Paras Chatas Muberes, the Shaila is the Vlad. Yeah? If you buy the mother, and it's told the same Kayetzman, the baby comes out also, Tamimah Mutza, perfectly red little calf. Yeah? That's what they're arguing about, if it's kosher or not.
It must be a French thing.
Okay, Bali Taisus makes sense.
Yeah.
At any rate, so that's the chiddush of this Rimi Simpunt, that the machlaik is not about the mother cow, the machlaik is about the baby calf. Kivin delay lachach shipar. There's mamish the word that you were saying. Yeah? Forget about an egla. What about an embryo? Yeah? Cattle futures. You bought a paradum embryo. V'uba nakat mishum revus Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar that's machsher, yeah? So it's revus Rabbi Lazar. Not only does he allow you, does he say it's kosher if you buy an egla, it's kosher even if you buy it in utero. Aval hu adinim lokha egla, l'maisa, the machlok loidiacha kaycha Rabbi Lazar, it's at an ukimta of paras chatas muberes. Yeah, but the chachamu who passel by a paras chata muberes, the vlad, the reason that they passel it is because they hold that this drasha of para v'loy egla is liikuva. So the chacham would hold the lokha egla paisel chacham mishum drasha anal ein shem. Imke muchach da'av b'diyav psula b'lokha egla v'tzarachin. Yeah, light that rimi simpan, so it is liikuva. It's a little bit shvelach on the Rambam that he lists all the other things that are liikuva to passel on a paras chatas, and he doesn't list lokha egla among them. V'ayin sham shemeyu v'shem sifri zuta near the kosher ayin sham v'chen kos v'tais. All right, whatever. It's a machlokes rishonim. I just want to submit one or two ideas over here. First of all, I mean, you have to see the Rash over there. It's a longer shmooze. The Pirush on the Mishnah in Para. Why do you think he wants to go away from the Pashtus? Why can't he learn the Machlokes talking about the mother cow? So he brings a chiddush, he brings this Rishon that they're arguing about the baby calf that's in utero right now. Why can't you learn Kipshut that the Machlokes about the mother cow? Any ideas?
Wouldn't that be Ashilai Alalei oil?
Precisely, right? Because the Gemaras that say that the psul of a paraduma bearing any burden, okay, we learn from Egla Rufa in the Torah itself it says Shalom Hashem Bamum, right? But we learn from a drasha from Egla Rufa it says Shalom Uvadba that no kind of work was done with it. There are nafkaminas, but we'll see in a minute between oil and other avaris. But anything, any weight bearing by a paraduma can passel it, yeah. So if it was a cow that was bred, if a zocher, if an ox or a bull was oila to impregnate it, that could already passel it out the weight bearing of it. That's one of the kashas that of learning about pashtus. And why the Rima Simpan says what he does. Like, what I want to submit though is maybe this idea in the original machlokes of the Rambam and the Ravid. So the Ravid says again that you don't need to set aside an escrow account. You could the Gizbarim could buy it when it's an egla, and then it won't be magdash until it's a para and Shalom Al Yisrael, everything's good. The Rambam says right? You shouldn't do that way. Don't buy it when it's an egla. Set aside an escrow account. So I'm thinking, I don't know for sure. Again, maybe somebody knows. I'm asking this out of Amaratzis. Maybe somebody knows I'm a Furish Gemara, I'm a Furish Mishnah somewhere. But maybe the Rambam holds that when the Gizbarim of the Migdash buy something, you don't need Kedusha Peh. Maybe there's something in the mice that transfer the Kedusha immediately onto the animal. So you don't have the Ravid Zayt. So you can't say buy it now and then we Magdash it later. What is it till now? What's its status till now? I mean, what happened to those mice? What happened to the Kedusha that was on those mice? They had to transfer onto something, no? I mean, the sellers are not going to be mild behegdish with those mice anymore. When they take the money and payment, they can use it to buy groceries. Yeah? Where did that Kedusha go? You want to tell me that no kedusha transfers when the gizbarim buy it? Again, I'm asking out of lack of knowledge. What? What?
It would have kedushas by the kabayas. Like let's say they buy a table.
Right.
It becomes the property of Hekdesh.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a paraduma, unless you say.
Well, the whole rub with paraduma is it always is. It's never more than kedusha b'edek habayis. That's why you need all these drushes of chatas kaya rachmana. It's not really kedusha guf like a gevan look. It's a myritic thing. It's what could be more halig than the paraduma? It's a matar from tumas meis. But the emes is that without the drush of chatas kaya rachmana, there would be a lot of things that are kosher in it that are possible in a regular carbon yachid. I'm just saying b'derech hula. I don't know. I mean, the Minchas Chinuch was the smartest man. I think if this was a legitimate chakira, of Volta's Kanzdog, and also, I'm just wondering out loud. I mean, I'm used to things the other way. I know when somebody's kachim kalam and nafal bamum, you can be paid it, and the kedusha transfers onto the mice, and you buy a new carbon with the mice. I know the other way around. When the animals start off kaddish, you can transfer kedusha off to the mice. But when gizbarim, it's just hard for me to understand. Gizbarim go to a cattle market, they pay money for something. I know that those mice are yaitzel l'chulin. What happened to the kedusha that was on that money? If it wouldn't be a paraschal, if it wouldn't be a paradum, if they're going to buy the tamid shel shachar, you'd say the same thing. That's kachim. That's not kedusha b'edek habayis. Okay, you tell me, Anachanami, they need Kedusha's bed. They buy it. You're right. Maybe it's two steps. Start off with Kedusha's damim, and then when they say, Harezu oilis tamid, okay. But, it's certainly mashma that way in the Ravid. I'm just saying, Efshar came online and the Rambam held not like that. That as soon as they buy something, there's immediate Kedusha. So there's immediate Kedusha, so then you're being lakayach when it's an egla. Okay, I mean, as I'm saying it now, it's hitting me another thing. I mean, the lashon of the pasuk is v'yikchu elacha paradum etmim. But it sounds like the kapeda of the Torah is in the ma'aseh lakicha, not in the ma'aseh kedusha. And I direct me to grab a finger over the Rabbi. He wants to say that as long as the kedusha is when it's a para, it's okay. I don't think that's the drasha. The pashtus of the drasha is that the lakicha has to be when it's a para.
The equally truma is also. Equally truma is a yitnu. It's also in a way of a yitnu. Take from it's to give it.
I understand, but I think over here when the pasuk says v'yikhu elach paraduma, it's like miloshin ki yikach yishisha. It's talking about the purchasing. So that's how all the Rishonim learn.
How you
What?
catch equally truma? There's evolution.
They attack a lot of drushes on why it doesn't say v'nasnuli truma. The drushes of Chazal, the Mefarshim have a lot of mahalchim and v'yikli truma. Weiß ich nicht. Okay, let's take a look at another famous halacha. To me, this was a chiddush. I never knew this particular halacha before. Turn to Amud Kuf Yud Beis, the second page of the handout.
Yeah.
Okay. Eis Zion. Yeah, the sidebar says Tmima Bad Mimus. Yeah. 1 second. No, actually 1 second. Before we go there, just by way of, back to Amud Kuf Yud. Eis Hey. On the left hand side, Eis Hey. By the bend. V'chol amum ha'paisel b'kachim paisel v'paro. Any mum that passes in other kachim, other karbanas, passes in a paraduma too. V'chein treifa. A treifa, which is possible for a carbon, is possible by a paraduma. Can you imagine the letdown? Taki, you found an animal the right age and oil and had perfect redness, and it wasn't a balmum. And then the shaykh of the bayit feels the lungs and there's a big gaping hole in the lung. Treif, ice paraduma.
Does it have to be glatt?
No, it doesn't have to be glatt. Well, I don't know. I guess that would be the machlaikas Ramon Beis Yosef. Yeah. Beis Yosef would have to be glatt. We're Ashkenazim here, even though the shul says Kang Sfard, we're Ashkenazim, that's why I said a big gaping hole in the lung. Okay. V'chein esnan u'mechir, we know esnan zayin u'mechir kelev, those are psulim and karbanas. V'yaitz adaifen, an animal that's born by C-section, is possible for karbanas. Haklal. Kol adon shepaisel mizbeach, anything that passes any other animal in Mizbeach, even though this paraduma this never goes on the Mizbeach, passes by paraduma too. I'm Baram, Pergil, Mr. Mizbeach, Paisel Paragamken. Why? The Chattas Karya Rachman. It's our nickname. It's not really a Chattas, but it's called a Chattas. Mei Chattas. Yeah, so in Mela, it has all the psulim in common with a Chattas. Well, Parsha Sama Popalti, Im Loikim E'alav, Im Magdash HaPara, El Azrika K'may B'kotch Me'alav, thank HaMakayim. Okay? There are lavim in the Torah, if a person has Magdash HaBalmum, if he's Zayrik the Dam of a Balmum, so he's mafalful if those lavim go on the Paraduma too, but that's not the place. Avol Nifsal HaPara B'chol Mum, Ayez Psul K'may K'may Mizbeach, but without getting into whether those lavim apply, L'gabi the Psul, a para becomes possible with any mum or anything else that passes any other carbon. Okay, now let's take it on the page. Go through your days for a second. Okay. Zion. Utzricha shetiya tmima ba'ad mimus. Okay, so we all know the Rashi. What does it mean? Para aduma tmima, tmima ba'ad mimusa. What does that mean?
Red.
Oh, but tmima, what's the tmima to the red? What would make it ice?
Two black hairs. Right?
Two black hairs, two white hairs. Right. Okay. So what happens if you find one white hair on the ankle and one white hair on the shoulder? It's a kosher paraduma or it's a pasla paraduma? I always thought it was a pasla paraduma. Take a look at this. It's usually tmiyum bad miusa. Hayu lekroneha oitlafeha mara acher yokutz binish loyasa esabal smum. First of all, not only does the hair on this animal have to be red, but it has to have oistelisha horns and hooves too. You want to talk about how rare this is? And I don't know if they could do this even with bioengineering. You know, it's got to have. I don't know exactly what it means, a red hoof or a red horn, but that's also the tmim bad mimusa. If there's a part of the horn or the hoof that has the wrong color, you can start shaving it, but only shaving it in a way that doesn't make it a baal smum. And again, I don't know the prate dinim of what does make it a baal smum or not, but. Interessant Allah, it's not only going on the hair, it's going on the non-hairy parts of the animal too. Yeah. V'shtei sar shchayris, or meizim in seva, if they're black, if they're white, any other color other than red. And again, you gotta know what red means. I don't think red in the paraduma means fire engine red. I think, what we call a redhead, a gingy, it says auburn color. Chutz me'adam, paislois by. V'davke, so I feel betoich shtei gumas ve'munachas zu alzu. When we say the two cyrus of another color, pasal paraduma, that's only if they're growing out of one root, or if they're growing out of two roots, but close enough that they lie upon one another. They touch one another. Ayin kasu Mishnah. But mufuzara is kshera. If the non-red hairs are spread out over the animal, they're not adjacent to one another, they're not growing out of the same root, that's kosher. Now, my question is, what's the shear? What if it has 500? I mean, 500 hairs is not a lot of hairs over the body of an animal. I mean, even 500 hairs on the scalp of a human being, it's not a lot of hairs. What happens if it has 500 hairs that are white, but all over the place? You know? No two adjacent to one another. It could still be a kosher paraduma. I would think so. It's not two hairs out of one guma or sheikh v'zul gabizu. So I'm wondering, at what point, if 50% of the animal is white and 50% is red, but just it's arranged in such a way that they alternate the hairs. Red hair, white hair, red hair, white hair. That's also a paraduma. I don't know. I'm just clearing. Okay, there's another thing in the din and the shear of these hairs. It has to be something that a tweezer can chapzach onto. If it's something that's so short that it can't even be tweezed, it doesn't pass. Okay, let me see what we have. We have time for.
With a tweezer, does he mean bezug as a tear?
No, a zug in his terminology means a tweezer. No, cotton bezug means a tweezer. Okay, let's take a look on Amud Kuf Yud Gimel. Let's start from Eis Yud. Okay, again, I'm just trying to show you some of the oddities. We're talking about the Chukas HaTorah, the real, irrational law of the Torah. Some of the bizarre is not the right word, but odd, interesting dinam of paraduma you don't find in other kabbalas. Yeah.
Paradum itself
Right.
is a chag, right? It's an odd
Yeah,
thing.
100%.
So now from that odd thing,
Right.
we have more odd things.
Correct. I mean, I said over a little bit earlier that that some of the Rishonim learned that the chukah of it is it looks like a carbon for avodah zarah, but the pashut shot of the chukah of it is what all they say is how can I have two opposite pulas in the same? We have a lot of chukim in the Torah. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the whole Bible, 1/6 of Shas say that Taharis, the whole thing is a chayk. There's nothing rational to explain Tumah and Tahara and the things that are Garim Tumah and the things that are Garim Tahara. But the big chayk of Paradum, the way most Rishonim learn is the fact that it's Matama Taharim and Matara Tameim. But somebody's Tamei Meis, you spritz the water, the Paradum water, the Mechatas on him, that's his antidote to his Tumah. And the people who are Isaac in the making of the Paraduma, they become Tamei. So how can one thing have two opposite pools? Okay. Let's take a look at this again. Just getting over this thing of Chatas Kaya Rachmana, how it's like other kabbanas, how it's different from other kabbanas. We'll take a look at Eis Yud. V'asiyas apara hi chutz l'shalosh machnas. Haina chutz Yerushalayim gamkein. Apara aduma has to be done outside of Yerushalayim city limits. And when the first para the Moshe Rabbeinu made in the Midbar, the corollary kedusha to kedusha Yerushalayim was Machne Yisrael. Right? There were three machnas. Machne Shechina. That's a corollary to inside the Azar in the Beis HaMikdash. Machne Leviyah in the Midbar, it's a corollary to Kedusha's Harabayas. And Machne Yisrael, that's a corollary to Kedusha's Yerushalayim. Yeah, Mitzvah couldn't walk into Yerushalayim. V'asiyas hapar chutz l'shalosh machnas. Hainu chutz Yerushalayim gamkein. V'losha Rambam kam bergim aloch aleph. Ain't sarfen es hapar el chutz l'Harabayas, lav dafka. He says, otherwise it's a Meridik Shver Rambam. These are Mefurish Mishnayos, these dinim that he said before. When the Rambam says you have to make the para outside the Harabayas, he wasn't being specific. That's not good enough. It has to be Chutz L'Yerushalayim. V'chein Chutz L'Kesev Mishnah, the Kesev Mishnah Afanot says that the Rambam doesn't mean literally Harabayas, he really means Yerushalayim altogether. V'nira, dim sarfua b'Yerushalayim psula, dein zemekayma. Yeah? The opposite way around. The same way that if you would be shaykhet to mala b'chutz, right? There's a law in the Torah. You can't burn kachim mizbeach outside of Isser Bama. Bizman Isser Bamas. You can't burn outside the Azar, outside the mizbeach. So now he's saying the other way around. Yeah? Too young is no good, and too inner is no good. If you would burn it inside Yerushalayim, that's possible. V'nir dem sarfu b'Yerushalayim psula, dein zamekayma. Gam nira the har mishka ein amakiv. To be in neged hechel, aval har mishka ein amakiv. Does not have to be done in har mishka. V'chein shchitasa v'chein hazasa b'Yerushalayim psula. If the shchita of the paraduma or the hazah, yeah, they used to sprinkle from the blood after they shechted it. Obviously not on the mizbeach because it was chutz Yerushalayim. If you do it in Yerushalayim, it's possible. V'chein mavur lahedya b'zvachim kuf yud gimel amar aleph. Ja, so steht in Zvachim. Ushchit is a para ksher bizar, kachol hakotshim. However, the shchita of a paraduma could be kosher with a non-kayin. Why? Because even chatas kaya rachmana, an actual chatas can also be shechted by a non-kayin. The din is, mekabal ve'ela mitzvah's kahuna, malam al shchita ksher bizar. There are four avodas amater in every zevach and every geshacht in the carbon. There are four avodas that have to be done, shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. The first one can be done by Azar, by a non-kayin. So what you mentioned before, the machshavas psulis, pigel, nicer, a non-kayin could do that too. If he's the shaykhet, if a Levi Yisrael shechting the behemoth, and they have a machshavas chutz l'zman and chutz l'mkaymai, so it's significant. It takes. Ken pasuk aram perak al b'sulam mikdash malacha beis. The lava vaydahi. Yeah, Lagabi the other three, it's an avodah Lagabi pasling it with a pasal machshava. But Lagabi the other three, Kabbalah and Halacha and Zrika, Shchita is not considered an avodah, meaning an avodah that's tone kahuna, you require kind. Vayinsham because of Mishnah Tam, the pasuk around came. V'davka b'yayim, but it has to be done, the Shchita, the paradum has to be done by Yayim, the Shchita b'layah psula. V'ad shenasis Heifer, Paisel Laila, Kashem Avur B'Samuch. You got to pay attention to the clock. It might be a whole long process, processing a paradum until you reduce it to ashes. It's got to be done Chutz Yerushalayim and totally by day. It doesn't need a kayin, but it's got to be out of Yerushalayim and by day. V'tzarech sh'itiyah ha'avayda ha'ina shchita v'kabal v'azol l'shma k'chol ha'chatayis b'mikdash. All the avaydas, shchita, kabbalah, and hazah have to be done l'shma. Why again? Because we come back to this old thing, the chatas kaya rachmana, and the karban chatas is one of the two karbanas that machshava shaloi l'shma passes. What does a machshava shaloi l'shma mean? In a chatas or in any carbon, machshava shaloi l'shma means if you shecht a carbon, either for the kedusha of a different carbon, if you shecht a chatas l'shem oila, l'shem shlomim, l'shem taida, that passes the chatas. Or if you shechted something called machshava shini bailam. Another shalal shema would mean that if Ruvain is this person who's being mischaper with his chatas, and you shechted the chatas almanas, that Shimon should be mischaper with it. That's also considered machshava shalal shema. If or how one would make a machshava shini bailam on a carbon tzibur, I'm not quite sure. What is a person thinking that it should be? A kapara and matar tameim for the gevainim, for the kusim, for stam non-Jews. I'm not quite sure what if or how there could be a machshava shinui bailam in a carbon tzibur, but certainly you can have a machshava shalal shema on the kedusha of the carbon. You think it's a para adum, and I'm shachting it l'shem par yom kippurim. I'm shachting it l'shem oila, l'shem shlomim, l'shem any other kind of carbon. Or if in the middle of the shechita, in the middle of the Kabbalah, you think, okay, paraduma, but also oila. Or the other way around, the chatas kaya rachmana. We come back to this. It's not really a chatas, but if the Torah calls it a chatas, then it has all the specs of a chatas. Whatever dinim of shalai lishma applied to a true chatas can be applied to a paradum as well. Okay, we have a few minutes left. Let's take a look at this sugya of Allah. It's pretty confusing, but it's an interesting machlokes rishayim going on over here. Turn back to page Kufyud, to the first page of the handout. Bottom of the page, Eisvav. Okay. So we know the mumen that and any other things, any other kind of things, the passel, other karbonis, esnan, mechir kelev, nirva, geschachten in the wrong place, although it's a different wrong place, but whatever is wrong for it. Yeah. Now we have something that's specific to paradum besides tmima bad mimusa. Eisvav. You say rapara al kol hakodshim. Something that's different about paraduma than all other kodshim, shaha'oil v'ha'avayda paislim ba. A yoke or other kinds of work, pasal a paraduma, ben kaim shekdisha, ben lacher shekdisha. Whether the oil and the vihaistis and the avayda came before kedusha or after kedusha, doesn't matter. And certainly, I would think in the Ravid's in between stage, when the money's in an escrow account, when you bought it, you designated it already for a paraduma, but you didn't do the actual hegdish of it for a paraduma. It would certainly passel. When it's absolute chulin, the oil passels it. Certainly in the Ravid's in between stage. Okay, so this is something you don't have by any other kabbanis. There's absolutely nothing wrong with working an animal on your farm for 3 years and then mean makdish as a shlomim or an oila and so on. This is something that's miyuchid to the paraduma. Even though in paraduma itself all it says is oil, oil, I'm beside them and you learn out from it says oil by paraduma. It says oil by egla rufa, and by egla rufa it also says ashalai uvadba, that it wasn't worked with. So we know from egla rufa that any other avodas also possible that applies to paraduma as well. Oil. So why was the Torah miyachad oil? Let it just say ashalai uvadba by the paraduma. Yeah. Oil paisel ben b'shas avayda ben shaloi b'shas avayda. Shah avaydas ein paisel sala b'shas avayda. There is something miyuchad, specific, about an oil. And that is, an oil on the paraduma pasels, even though the oil went onto the paraduma shaloi b'shas avayda. Shaloi b'shas avayda doesn't mean avayda kai, means avayda animal. Other kinds of burdens, weight bearing that happen to the paraduma, it's only if it's b'shas avayda. What does that mean? Machlokes b'shainim, Rashi and the Rambam. Let's see. V'ayim pirish Rashi, the Ramaslim kain shapirish. Gabi oil shaloi b'shas avayda v'zel l'shainim. What does it mean that an oil, a yoke, on the paraduma can passel it even if it's not at the time of work? Afilu hinicha le'lo hakal masa shebiyada v'loy limshoich mikol malkam paisel. If a guy just throws a yoke on this paraduma, because he himself was carrying the yoke or was carrying other packages, and just to make his load lighter, not that he wants to plow a field using the paraduma, yeah, he just needed to unburden himself a little bit, and he was using the paraduma as a stand, so to speak, yeah. That's shaloi b'shas avayda. That's not at the time of working with a yoke. That's not with intent to work with the yoke. As I learned Rashi shaloi b'shas avayda. Bottom line is, the halach expects for everything. Yeah, how many cyrus passel? I mean, you probably would have to get into prate dinim. What's exactly called a yoke? What's an oil? What's the shear of a yoke? Yeah, we have a lot of shiurim, a lot of nomenclature here tonight. What's an egla? What's a para? What a shtei cyrus? I mean, you have to know gnoi, what a yoke is. What happens if you have a yoke that's fitted for goats, lamazogan, and you threw it on an ox or a cow. That also passels. I mean, I don't know if there is such a thing. I don't know, Maybe you have yokes that are fitted for donkeys, for horses, yeah? And you threw that on the paraduma. Would that passel too? Anything that's got a shame oil on it, does it? Yeah? I don't know. But anyway, whatever is called an oil, Rashi learns that you place an oil on the paraduma, no intent to work with it, doesn't matter. It's possible already. Val b'shas avayda pirish la'alan v'zel l'shayna. By masha'enka and other things that we said at avayda or a masa, a weight on the paraduma passes it. It's only b'shas avayda. This is how Rashi explains it. Climber, sha'avayda zu l'tzayrechi, aval akroi ba'alma. If it's just happenstance, the avayda, the weight that you're bearing is purposeful. You want this animal, at least temporarily, this paraduma, to be your beast of burden. Aval akroi ba'alma, if it's just a happenstance thing, she'niach sakola v'loy la'alicha el akri v'aysiv loy pasla. In other words, a guy's carrying two burdens. Yeah, he's carrying a yoke that you hitch the animals that you should plow fields with, and he's carrying a bunch of sacks of merchandise, fruits, whatever's in them, right? And he's tired, so he wants to put it on the paraduma for a second. If he puts the oil on the paraduma is possible. If he puts the sacks on the paraduma, that's okay. It's just like lahafish. In a minute, he's going to take the sacks off and keep on carrying them himself. That paraduma is still kosher. If he's putting the sacks on the paraduma with the intention, okay, now it's your turn. Para, I carried my share, now you carry a little bit. That would passel. That's called shas avayda. But if it's stam, akray ba'am, he lost himself. He forgot what a precious commodity he has over your paraduma, and he just threw the sacks on for a second, that he should rest. That's okay. Umavur sham. If you take a close reading of this Rashi, what do you see? Afal pi, okay, turn the page. Deloi mashcha klal ba'oil pasla. According to the Rashi, the mere laying of the oil on the animal sounds like even if you didn't strap it on. I mean, I'm not a rancher, but I imagine that you got to harness it. You can't just throw the oil on the animal and say giddy up and probably fall off. Probably have to tie it. You have to harness it. You didn't harness it. You didn't actually make the animal pull. Be mashach ba'oil. It doesn't matter. You put an oil on it, it passes. You didn't put the oil on the animal's shoulders with the intention that it's going to pull the yoke. Dafkim kiven l'haylach. That's what shas avoda means. If you want it to move it for you, then it passes. V'nir devarv after be'emes le'helichem mikol malkam b'anach levad adat l'hayach nefsel. Okay, so no, there's a difference. You shouldn't put anything on it. But if you did put things other than a yoke on it, according to Rashi, that doesn't passel it. If you put a weight on it with the intention that now the part is going to carry it for you, that would passel it. But if you're just like trying to unburden yourself, that would be okay. But a yoke, even if all you're trying to do is unburden yourself, no good. Passels the paradum. The Zelishan Ramam kan halacha zayin. The Ramam learns different. What's the exact Lashon Ramam? Let me read the Lashon Ramam, because I see he leaves out a few words over here. Yisera paraduma. This is Perak Aleph halacha zayin. Yisera paraduma ala kodshim sha'avoda peiselos ba shenema ashalei ala oil uvegla rufa oima ashalei uvad ba ashalei moshka ba oil ma oil hama begla asa sha'avodas ka oil. Just like by egla make ashalei uvad ba, he made other avodas like the oil. Afal amipara yivsol ba sha'avodas ka oil. Ella. So why does the Torah specify oil? Ella sha'oil paisel ben b'shas avoda ben shalei b'shas avoda v'sha'avodas and paisel b'shas avoda. Okay, so far he's just quoting the Lashon of the Gemara. He wasn't mefarish anything yet. So Rashi said his pshat. Now listen to what the Rambam says. Kate said, Kasha leha oil, afal pishlei charish b'psula. If you tied the oil onto it. Close reading the Rambam says, not if you laid an oil on it. If you tied the oil onto it, even though you didn't actually plow with it, it's possible. Hichnisa ladush, if you brought your para in to the threshing ground, okay, where the animals walk over the husks of the grain and loosen the husk from the kernel, that's malachas disha, right? Like sachsam shar b'disha, you're not supposed to muzzle your animals during disha, but that's the avayis adisha. Avayis adisha is to walk over the kernels of animal, and the pressure of the weight of the animals loosens up the husk, the chaff, I should say, from the grain. Hichnisel ladush, if you bring it into the disha place, ein nefsalos ad shiyadush ba, then it doesn't become puzzle until you do actual disha. Says the Rambam saying the same thing as Rashi? The Rambam is saying something different from Rashi. Right? It's not a question of only weight bearing and happenstance. It's a question of shas avodah shloi b'shas avodah. He's learning intention of work, or work started yet, or work didn't start yet. He's learning a little bit more literal. Yeah, disha. First of all, disha is no weight bearing on the part of the para. On the contrary, it's the kernels of grain that are bearing the weight of the animal that causes malachas adisha, that buyer, that initial separation of desirable from undesirable, that's coming from the weight of the animals on top of the grain. So he's learning b'shas avodah and shaloi b'shas avodah. Did the work start yet or not? Right? But it's got to be with intention to work. Yeah. It sounds like according to the Rambam, he's in a certain sense more mekel than Rashi. If you just threw an oil on top of an animal because you were tired, yeah, but you have no intention to work with it. I mean, my reading of the Rambam, to me, it sounds like the Rambam would say that's kosher. I don't know if it carried a veisachnish, because the lashon Ram though is to tie it. Tie it means you're intending to work with it. You don't tie an oil on if all you're doing is trying to rest.